Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Dear students, today is the 18th of March 2020 where everyone has to stay at home. Don't move. Don't go anywhere. Minimize your motions because the viruses out there is very dangerous. So for our lecture on the 18th of March, which is today, right now, we will discuss the topics of different types of flower through video. Okay, so I dedicated this video especially for you guys, so you don't have to come to museum. Just watch my video and try to digest. Alright, before we start our first video lecture, let's recite Kitab Al-Fatihah and we make dua so that Allah will cure everybody that has been infected with this kind of disease, with coronavirus. So we start our class with Kitab Al-Fatihah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin Ar-Rahmanir Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in Ihdinas siratal mustaqim Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. For the last lecture, we had discussed on the flour itself, where we can make very many types of flour based on what types of grains that we use. So for the purpose of baking, bread making, biscuits making, and pastries, we are going to use the type of flour which is made of wheat. Wheat is the gandum itself. So this wheat flour has many types of protein contents. Actually, the protein contents is the primary differentiators for wheat flours. The protein contents in flour is very important, primarily important in determining the specific usage or the specific baked goods, right? So we can classify our wheat flour into three categories, right? Okay, the first one is the high protein flour. The second one is the medium protein flour and the low protein flour. Okay, these types of high protein flour actually is made of the hard wheat, not the soft wheat. So the hard wheat has high protein content compared to the low protein content flour, which is made from soft wheat. How about the low protein content flour? Okay, the second types of flour which has the low protein content, normally it is made from the soft wheat. Okay, the protein amount in the soft wheat or the low protein flour could be in between 5 to 10% of flour. Okay, the more proteins embedded or consist in the type of flour, the more gluten it has. So it can give the stronger volume or the high volume to the bread. So if you have a lesser amount of protein content in your types of flour, that means you cannot have a high volume of bread. Now we are going to discuss specifically on bread making. So to make a good bread, we have to go for the high protein flour. which is known as also the flour that is made of hard wheat. Guys, do you know that we need flour to bake our bread, biscuits, cakes, and so whatnot? But do you know what is flour actually? Flour is a type of powdered or meal made into degrees finest through the acts of grinding or milling. It can comes in various grains such as wheat, soy, corn, rice, samit or semolina, bucks, as well as wheat. So this flour contains many minerals, and the protein and starches itself contributes to the strength and structure of our baked goods, especially the leavened yeast bread. Choosing the correct flour is very important for the successfulness of our recipe. If you choose the wrong types of proteins, there you will get a disaster. Actually, different varieties of flour are distinguished based on the locations and the growing conditions. These types of wheat demands specific climates and also the weather. Wheat can be classified into winter wheat and also spring wheat. So like for the wheat classes, right, we have the hard red winter, we have the hard red spring, and we have the hard white. These types of wheat classes is very suitable to make our breads and other yeast leavened baked goods. We have the other category of wheat classes, which is the soft red winter and the soft white. Okay? By referring to the word itself, the soft, so these types of wheat is suitable to be used in the cakes, in the crackers, in the cookies, as well as pastries. And the third types of wheat, known as durum, aka semolina, it is very suitable to be used in noodles making, pastas, some Italian bread. So let's go further to the types of flour available in the market for bread making purposes and other baked goods. Among the primary types of wheat flour that we use today, they are cake flour, they are pastry flour, we have the all-purpose flour, bread flour, high gluten flour, free gluten flour, vital wheat gluten, as well as the durum flour that we use to make our pasta. Different flour has different amount of protein contents. So these types of flour, as I mentioned before, such as the cake, pastry, all-purpose flour, whole wheat, high gluten, has different percents of protein. Now we are talking about the wheat flour. Alright. For the high protein flour, okay, the protein content is ranged within the 10 to 14%. So these types of high protein flour, normally it is made of hard wheat types. Doesn't matter, it can come from hard red winter wheat, it can comes from hard red spring or hard white wheat. And these types of high protein flour is very important in bread making and especially for the yeast leavened baked goods. For the medium protein flour, it is actually a combination of hard wheat and the soft wheat with the right proportions and ratio. And the types of flour that are available in the market and could be claimed as the medium protein content is the all-purpose flour. These types of flour is very important in making cakes, crackers, cookies, and pastries as well. However, the third class of protein flour, which is the low protein flour, has the lowest amount of protein content, and it is very suitable for making moist cake. Okay, let's go one by one to the specific types of flours and its protein content. So, for the high protein flour, which is the high gluten flour, has 13.5 to 14.5% of protein, and normally these types of high gluten flour is used to bake our bagels, hard rolls, because we also use this high gluten flour to complement the protein or the flour which has a weaker amount of flour, such as rye, which is made from other types of grains, and our specialty flour also sometimes is being assimilated with the high gluten flour. Alright, for the whole wheat flour, it contains 13 to 14% of protein, and it is suitable to be used for our breads. And for the normal bread, we only use the protein amount in between 11.5 to 14% of protein. For the all-purpose flour, normally the percentage of protein is in between 9.5 to 12%. And for the pastry biscuits, we only need 7 to 9.5% of protein. And for cake baking, we need the least amount of protein content, which is between 6 to 8. We also have our specialty flours. Normally, the specialty flours, it is made from other types of grain, or it is made from wheat, which is the whole wheat flour and the wheat germs. And the non-wheat composites flours, they are rye flour, cornmeal flour, oats, and rice flour. The types of flour actually has different protein level, as I mentioned before. For the high gluten flour, it has high absorption, strength, structural integrity, and high mixing tolerance, excellent absorption properties, and outstanding elasticity. It is very perfect to make bagels, pizza, crust, and chewy rolls bread. Normally, this high gluten flour is mixed with other flours to lend some strength to the whole grain and multi-grain loaves. For the all-purpose flour, so as I mentioned before, we can categorize the flour into three types of group or classes based on the protein content, where the high protein content actually goes to the types of flour which is made from hard wheat. Okay, for the medium protein content, so the flour with the medium proportions of protein content actually is the all-purpose flour, which is made of the combinations of hard wheat flour and the hard wheat and the soft wheat, while the last category of the flour is the lowest flour with the lowest amount of protein content goes to the flour which is made from soft wheat. Okay, how many percent of this medium protein flour consists? So the protein amount for the medium types of flour is about 10 to 12 percentages, 12%. All right, normally this AP flour, all-purpose flour, it is made for making biscuits and flaky pie crust, because we want to have the crispiness apart from the sponginess or the fluffiness or the chewiness of the baked goods. Actually, all-purpose flour can comes in two types, which is the bleached flour and the unbleached flour. But for the safety purpose, for the safety concern, we actually go for the AP flour, which is the unbleached, because as we know, bleaching is not good to our health. Okay, normally people bleach using the potassium bromate, which is harmful to our lung. Okay, if we consume it too much, okay, consistently. All right. Normally, the third type of flour, okay, which has the lowest amount of protein content, we call it as cake flour. Okay, this cake flour has the lowest protein content, which is around 5 to 10%, and these types of flour has the lowest amount of gluten forming proteins, and it is very ideal to make cakes and also for the tender baked goods. Um, but it is also suitable to make some types of biscuits such as muffins and scones. Normally, for this type of cake flour, it is chlorinated or it is bleached, so that the gluten content in the flour itself will be weakened. Um, so the flour, okay, will be altered in terms of the starch contents, the protein content, where it has the more capability to absorb liquid. Okay, the capacity for the liquid absorbance and sugar is higher compared to the medium and the highest protein flour. Alright, okay. These types of cake flour is very suitable if you would love to prepare your moist cake. Alright, similar to all-purpose flour, okay, we have another types of flour which is in the medium ratio, protein ratio, in between 8 to 9%, which is the pastry flour. Okay, this pastry flour, it is made from the soft wheat, so it is quite suitable to give the balance between the flakiness and tenderness towards our final pastry products, and it is very perfect for pie, for tarts, and also cookies. So normally, to make our own pastry at home, people used to mix the pastry flour with the all-purpose flours in the combinations of 1 1/3 cups of all-purpose flour and 2/3 cups of pastry flour to get the balanced texture for our pastry flour. So for the highest protein content, of course, it is made from hard wheat, and normally people use this kind of flour to bake our bread. Okay, with the highest amount of protein content from 12 to 14%, so it has the strongest gluten content, which help very much in the development of the bread structural supports. So it is very important, especially if you want to bake your yeast bread, where you need a strong gluten development to retain the carbon dioxides during the fermentation. Okay, actually gluten is very important for the structural supports and as well as to retain the CO2, okay, for the volume during the fermentation. But if you have a type of flour which has a very high protein content, you have to notice that when after you bake your product, Of course, you have a higher bread with the better volume and chewier in terms of the crumb, all right? But it also could lead to the browning effects in the crust, right? The outer surface of the bread. So protein can lead to the browning as well due to the Maillard reaction. And bread flour can be found in white or whole wheat. It depends on you, where if you go for the white bread flour, that means you have removed the brands and also the germs. But if you go for the whole wheat flour, that means you still impart you didn't remove the brands and also the germs, as well as in the endosperms. So these types of flour as well, you can get it in the market, whether it is bleached or unbleached. And mm, normally, if you don't have your high protein flour or your bread flour, you can substitute this kind of flour with the all-purpose flour and go for the unbleached one. And there you can have a good result for your bread bake products. All right, what about the self-rising flour? Normally from the word, the term itself is this self-rising, means it can self-rise itself because something has been added to the flour during the milling process. Normally these types of flour, it is made from low protein wheat, and traditionally these types of wheat is grown widely in the south countries. All right, normally these types of self-rising flour, SRF, is suitable or the best for baking tender biscuits, muffin, pancakes, and or some types of cakes. Okay, normally these types of self-rising flour is tightly wrapped in a container or in its original box, and we can use it within 6 to 12 months after purchase. Why it is called self-rising flour, guys? Okay, normally a kind of chemical is added to this type of flour, which is the baking powder, and also types of salt. Okay, normally after 6 to 12 months, when you open your flour, so the baking product going to lose its umness. You can also prepare your own self-rising flour by combining a cup of pastry flour with 1.5 teaspoon of baking powder and also quarter teaspoon of salt. This is how you prepare your own self-rising flour in case like today we cannot go out to supermarket to buy our products, so we have to formulate our own self-rising flour. So for those who are suffering with the celiac diseases, where you cannot tolerate with the gluten, so there is a special types of flour which is known as gluten-free flour. It is made from all sorts of grains, nuts, and starches. And normally, you can prepare your gluten-free flour from your rice flour blended with tapioca and also potato starch. We add a small proportions of xanthan gum, which is okay, which is very much helpful to mimic or stimulate the chewiness texture, which is associated with the gluten itself. So to get the gluten structure, meanwhile you don't have gluten in it, so you have to replace this gluten with something else, which is the polysaccharide or hydrocolloid, such as xanthan gum, so it can resemble the structure of gluten in your baked goods. All right, now we have to understand the importance of wheat starches, why we choose wheat apart from other types of grains. because this wheat has high quality and it is very important as it gives function as thickeners, extenders, and has the capability of emulsion and also act as stabilizers. Um, these are ideal to be used to get the delicate texture, flavor, the color that we want in our final bread. So let's discuss on the different types of flour based on the hard wheat and the soft wheat flour. Normally for the hard wheat flours, right, it comes from the wheats with the endosperm, right, the kernel, right? The extracted white flour is then separated into various grades. So these grades can be straight grade flour with 100% of flour separation, pattern flour with 70 to 18% of separation, second clear flour with 20 to 30% left, short pattern flour with 60% of separations, and first clear flour with 40% left. High gluten flour comes from high protein wheat with 60% of separation. All right, like a high gluten flour, pattern flour, these are the two flours that are very much popular in the market. They are categorized under the hard wheat flour. So for the soft wheat flours, normally we have the pastry flours, we have the cake flours, pie flours, and whole wheat pastry flours. Normally this pastry flour, it is made from 100% of soft wheat flour separation, soft red or white wheat use flour protein up to 8 to 9%. Cake flour normally has the 60 to 70% of separations of the soft red wheat, and chlorine used to bleach for better cakes absorptions or water capability. It has a flour protein content around 7 to 8%. For pie flour, it is a pastry flour which is unbleached and preferably from soft white wheat, and this flour has protein content 7 to 9%. And for the whole wheat pastry flour, it is milled from soft white or red wheat and lends a lighter color and flavor. And the protein content is 7 to 9% of protein amount. So for wheat and flour types, for hard spring, we have hard winter, we have soft winter, right? So for hard spring and hard winter, we can see over here, it has high gluten content, uh, strongly pattern and spring pattern. Normally the hard spring used to make bagel, pizza crust, and bread rolls. The protein amount is quite high. It is in between 12 to 14% for hard spring. And the dough strength is very high. It also has high water absorption, 60 to 65%, and it can give you a longer mixing time for the gluten formations up to 40 minutes. For the second types of wheat, which is the hard winter, we can transform it into winter pattern and also all-purpose flour. Okay, these types of flour, actually we can use it to make pizza as well, quick breads, cookies, and the protein content in the hard winter wheat is 10 to 12%, and it will lead to the medium dough strength with medium water absorption 50 to 60%, and mixing time for the gluten formation, it takes about 8 to 12 minutes. For the soft winter, normally we use these types of flour to make pastry flour or cake flour. So these types of soft winter base flour is very suitable to make cookies, brownies, sheet cakes, and it has 7 to 9% of protein content. It has low water absorptions, and it has low dough strength, and we need a short mixing times because we don't want the gluten formation. We do have the unbleached and bleached flour as well. So from the word itself, we know that the bleached flour has undergo the a series of treatment to whiten the bread at the final process. So the fresh meal or the green flour will not produce a consistently good quality baked goods. So for the green flowers, if we unbleach them, so it can oxidize if we start up to 12 weeks. To avoid this condition, we have to go for the oxidation process using a specific types of bleaching agent such as chlorine, so that we have a whiter products, finer texture, and can extend the shelf life. Normally, for the bleach flour, Food Drugs Administration has approved a list of bleaching chemicals or maturing agent to improve the baking qualities and also the speed of oxidation. So the unbleached flour means there is no maturing agents or chemicals added. Bread flour is generally unbleached. So we have the all-purpose flour, which is bleached and unbleached. Both have equal nutritional value. All right. Why is flour enriched? In milling the white flour, the bran and the germs are left behind and many nutrients are lost. So we have to enrich our flour, means that we inject some of the important nutrients such as thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, vitamin B, iron, folates. We added back into the flour at the levels equals or higher than the naturally occurrence in the wheat. So flour may be fortified with calcium sometimes, so we call it as fortified. Why is sunflower malted? Malted barley flour is milled from sprouted barley. Supplements with natural enzyme to make better yeast raised product. Malted barley flour is not added to whole wheat flour, all-purpose flour, or cake flour. Ascorbic acid in flour. High protein flour may have ascorbic acid sometimes. If you buy your baked goods, you can see vitamin C in the labeling. It is added as the maturing agent to produce better volume and crumb structure to the bread. The vitamin C actually lost during heating or baking. So this ascorbic acid or vitamin C could be used to replace benzoyl peroxide, which is no longer used in bread flour as the maturing agent. Non-wheat baking ingredients. We can bake our bread using a non-wheat flour, and we use barley, can be either pearl barley, roll barley, or the flour one. We can go for the amaranth, flax, sorghum, quinoa, buckwheat, triticale, brown rice, and many more, where we roll it and transform it into flour and meal powder. Then we can make our bread. We also can use oatmeal, is the whole grain roll instant quick old-fashioned types of oat to make our bread, and also the corn flour. What if we bake our bread using the non-wheat ingredient? What about the quality? The non-wheat flour actually has they must be supported with high gluten strength wheat if you want to make the yeast bread. So substitute the non-wheat flour with the high gluten flour, at least 5 to 20% of the flour content, flour weight. In baking, we can mix our flour and turns into two types of baked goods. But before that, we have to understand the dough. What are the differences between the dough and the batter? For the dough is a flour mixture that is dry enough to be handled and kneaded. For the batter, it is a flour mixture that contains more water than the dough, and whose consistency ranges from pourable to sticky. Batters like doughs are also classified into according to their moisture contents and maybe either pour or drop batters. Storage: how to store our flour. Flour should be stored in the pest-proof containers and kept in a dry, cool place. White flour will keep in such condition for about a year. Whole grain flour should be refrigerated and can be held for only about 3 months. Storage of flour and flour mixture. Flour should be kept cool to prevent the activations of its natural enzymes, which can cause it to deteriorate if we store it for too long. Kneaded flour mixtures can be frozen. After defrost, they are ready to be shaped and baked.
Having discussed all of this, so we can summarize our discussion for today by highlighting the most important parts or subtopic in this lecture, okay, which is the definitions of flour and the categories of flour based on protein content, okay, and also the types of wheat based on the climates or the region where it is grown. With that, I hope everyone choose the correct flour, otherwise you cannot have your tasty and delicious baked goods. Enjoy. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.